Well, happy Aloha Friday. Thanks so much for tuning in here to Spotlight Hawaii, brought to you by Chaminade University. I'm Ryan Kalei-Suji, joined by Yanji Denise. And Yanji, this morning, we're going to be talking to someone that we haven't had the opportunity to talk to yet on this program, but a conversation we both and many people are looking forward to hearing from.
Absolutely. We are so excited to welcome Andrew Watterson, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer of Southwest Airlines. Of course, Southwest Airlines came into the Hawaii market a number of years ago and has really made a big mark and imprint, especially, I think, for a lot of local folks on neighbor island travel. So we want to talk to you about just since the pandemic, how the industry has changed and how your airline has pivoted. But first of all, let's just talk with the basics. How is business when it comes to flying to and from Hawaii?
Aloha, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So the airline business, as probably a lot of the visitor industry you've seen in Hawaii, has had its ups and downs over the last year and a half. And so right now we are seeing record levels of customers visiting Hawaii. We're seeing increased levels of outbound travel too from the islands to especially Las Vegas, as you mentioned. And so this is something we really weren't anticipating. Let's say even 6 months ago. So it's somewhat of a surprise how strongly travel's come back and how quickly.
Let's kind of go back in time a little bit. The Southwest came to the market in 2019 and really, as Yanji said, has built a presence here in our islands. If you can explain and just provide context about some of the routes that you guys currently offer and some of the things that you're seeing just in this initial first few years being here in the Hawaii market.
Well, yes, we entered the Hawaii market on St. Patrick's Day in 2019. We tend to do that. We announce some of our big markets on St. Patrick's Day. Our founder was an Irishman or Irish ancestry, and so that's always big for us to have a party on St. Patrick's Day. And so we entered with a handful of routes from the mainland, and shortly after that, some neighbor island routes. And so when we first were looking at coming to Hawaii, we announced our intentions, and we did a lot of talk stories around the islands to understand the community needs and desires, because we didn't want to just be another airline bringing visitors. And we heard a lot about the need for neighbor island competition. And so we recast our plans and added in neighbor island flying in addition to flying from the mainland. And so we started off with that in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and obviously we dialed things back, and then we approached the your local leaders, governor and such, and asked, should we keep flying during the pandemic? And the response was yes, please, for essential air service to people to kind of get about the islands and to and from the mainland for those who truly need to travel. So we did that until really the spring when things started to open back up, and then we kind of got back to our original plan, which was to offer multiple gateways from the mainland because we were really big on the mainland, especially in the western part. We also heard in our talk stories that people from the islands wanted Vegas nonstops, and not just from Honolulu, but from neighbor islands. So we added that into our route network to appeal to the Kama'aina. So now we have Sacramento, San Jose, Oakland, San Diego, LAX, Phoenix, and Las Vegas as our mainland gateways, and pretty much serving 4 of the 5 airports in Hawaii that we serve. And Hilo, for the moment, we just serve between the islands.
I'm interested to know, I know that, 2019 is not that long ago, but you did have a stretch where it was, sort of pre-pandemic travel. How have you seen the visitors change? Who is coming to Hawaii right now versus who came before the pandemic began?
Well, you're right. We only had a limited data set there in 2019, but what we do see compared to 2019 is we have more families traveling than in 2019. We have more frequent flyer redemptions. About a quarter, 25% of our seats are occupied by people redeeming points. And we're also seeing more of our kind of top customers, meaning those who flew the most frequently. Those also are the ones we're seeing coming to the islands more than 2019, as they had built up point balances themselves. And even though they might be paying cash this time, they appear to be wanting to come to the islands in bigger numbers. So really, it's most of our kind of pre-existing customers, not so much new customers for us that are coming to the islands.
There's a lot of talk now and these days about just the overall sustainable tourism. And when you look at the growth that Southwest has had from 2019 to today, it's pretty incredible just to see how many more seats you're filling and how many more visitors on Southwest alone is bringing to our islands. And while many will say that they're great to have more options and more carriers that are coming to the islands, there are others who may argue that the community and market here in Hawaii is becoming oversaturated. What would you say Southwest's plan is for sustainable tourism when it relates to Hawaii?
Well, I would say that, even before the pandemic, even before people started talking about regenerative tourism and sustainable tourism, we took the approach, as I just mentioned, that we wanted to not just be an airline bringing visitors. Yes, bringing visitors is part of our business, but we wanted to have these, the routes we fly between the neighbor islands that are primarily for the Kama'aina, as well as visitors on multi-island visits, as well as flights, say, to Vegas and that weren't being offered nonstop. And so we wanted part of our business to be giving back, as well as bringing the visitors. We also have, our community involvement, whether that's sponsoring, Ronald McDonald House or Access Surf or other kinds of community donations. That's part of who we are. But overall, we understand that, tourism right now is at unsustainable levels. And it's not just in Hawaii. You look around all the United States, people have come back with a vengeance for travel. And so there's many destinations we serve today that we've served for decades that are also experiencing an over-tourism. And we see that because people, thanks to the government aid, are in pretty good shape financially. So the consumers have money to spend. They've saved up their vacation balances because they're working from home. So they're actually spending longer on their vacations and making up for what they missed. And then some of the big business centers, people are going there less on their vacations, like say in New York City or San Francisco. So that means all this vacation is being concentrated in a subset of traditional vacation locations. And then you add in international being closed for the most part for outbound US travel, and it just puts too much stress on the resulting places, including Hawaii. And our expectation is as the bigger cities start to open back up, you see more business and tourism in those places, and international opens back up, that'll kind of be a pressure reliever for places like Hawaii and other kind of destinations that over-index on nature. You'll see a little, diminution of that pressure and kind of get back to normal, even though I think normal still required a focus from us all about how to have tourism be more sustainable.
And how long do you expect that to take? Because, you did mention at the top that we saw this rush of folks coming back. And of course, it's not just Southwest, or the hotel industry. When we talk to them, whatever the sector is, they all say, we didn't expect people to come at this level this quickly. We're not ready when it comes to staffing and all the other sort of needs that you have when you run a business like that. So, you have the benefit of being able to project out a little bit, because presumably people don't book their flights the weekend before, although that is possible. But how long do you expect us to be in the sort of rush mode right now that we're seeing?
Well, during COVID times, we can't see as far as we usually do. What's encouraging to me is Canada recently opened up, or announced they're going to open up soon to U.S. visitors. So that's a source. The UK just recently opened up to vaccinate U.S. visitors, as well as continental Europe. And so for the summer, I think that was probably a little bit too late. But as we look towards the holidays and next spring vacations, where the next really high seasons, you expect to see kind of a lot of tourists traveling, they'll now have those more options. And we're also seeing some parts of Asia might limit well beyond that. So inbound tourism from Asia, let's say, may take longer than that to come back. And we'll see outbound tourism from the US being able to go towards Europe and Canada. So I would expect as we go from here through to next spring break, it'll be progressively less tourist demand on these fewer places. And so hopefully by this time next year, it feels more like 2018 or 2019, not like it is right now. Once again, 2018, 2019, we were still feeling a lot of pressures in places like Hawaii, where tourism was pretty close to the capacity levels.
Some of the alarming images that we see here locally are just how busy our airports are with the amount of flights that are coming in. And of course, with the added protocols that are happening, there's longer lines because there's more things to get through the experience of just traveling through an airport. There have been some calls from local leaders that have asked that flights stop coming to Hawaii, that we look for ways to reduce the amount of flights flying into our islands. With Southwest, I know this is kind of counter a strategic business plan, but would Southwest ever consider reducing the number of flights coming into our islands and the number of visitors that you folks are bringing in?
Well, I think I've heard some of the mayors talk about it, and others talk about that. the airlines can't communicate or coordinate capacity levels. That's an antitrust violation. You go to jail if you do that. So there's not an opportunity for the airlines to kind of get together and rationalize supply. That goes against the laws. However, you do see as demand would fall off, or if there's not available accommodations for all these travelers, that creates a natural throttling mechanisms. Then the airlines see they won't be able to fill up their seats, and they start to move down supply. So you really start to see that feedback loop from reduced demand leading to less supply from airlines. So I would expect, as we saw that this time, there were islands that ran out of rental cars, that ran out of accommodations, and there were airline seats that were not full. And so I would imagine that then will lead to the next airline planning cycle, whether it's our airline or other airlines, that they would then change how much they fly based on that limitation. You see this sometimes in Caribbean islands that also have just a limited number of hotels, and when the airline seats get ahead of the bed, so to speak, then the airlines adjust. So that's a normal way it would work, and I don't think you can really expect anything other than normal, because there's some pretty strong laws against that.
Let's talk a little bit about COVID safety protocols. We know that there were a lot of concerns early on with air travel and just keeping passengers safe and making sure that the airlines weren't sort of, a flight wasn't a super spreader event, if you will. So far, it seems that flying has proved to be relatively safe, but there are airlines now that are mandating vaccinations. Delta Airlines has said that they plan to require vaccines for their employees. We see at the state level here, the governor just announcing yesterday that all state and county employees in our state will have to be vaccinated. What are Southwest's plans to that end?
Well, I have nothing to announce to you today. Up to this point, what we've done is we put in those safety protocols you talked about, really focused on masks, the air filtration in the airplanes, and the cleaning. We do know that vaccinated is better, so we aggressively communicate with our employees, encourage them. We incent them to be vaccinated, but at this point, we have not required them. There's also some legal questions about that. Things are moving fast with other in the broader economy, and so we're certainly evaluating that right now. Nothing to announce right now, but it is something that we take seriously. The fact that vaccinated people can still spread the disease gives us pause. That's helpful, but we'll still need to have protocols such as masks and filtration systems to help those who are maybe immunocompromised, who would be subject to any kind of spreading, whether you're vaccinated or not. So I think the safety protocols are something we're gonna have to rely on for a while to come, even if the vaccination status goes up, as we all hope.
We know that local leaders are, in fact, meeting right now to discuss should there be any changes to the Safe Travels program that is required to fly into the islands. The mayors, as well as state officials, meeting to discuss if Hawaii should look at taking away the vaccination verification plan that they have implemented and that many people have been using to get back into the islands, and bypassing that required testing that we saw for so many months. What do you think the impact would be should the state decide to backstep and do away with the vaccination verification and go back to the pre-testing? Did you see any complications or any issues in the messaging that had to go out to those visiting our islands and making sure that they are aware of the requirements to bypass any sort of quarantine here in Hawaii?
Well, I'll start off with the Safe Travels and program, and kind of tip my hat to the government of Hawaii. A lot of locations, talked about restrictions, talked about what they wanted, but they didn't actually put the effort into establishing programs and following through. Hawaii did. So even though many states said they didn't want travel, you had to have negative tests, they didn't actually enforce it. Hawaii did. So hats off to Hawaii for enforcing it. And it was, I think, a program that worked quite well, and it is working quite well. With regards to testing, we saw when the Safe Travels first rolled out in October of last year in particular, it was pretty easy for us to communicate with our customers. Our customers buy directly from us, not through an intermediary, so they listen to what we say because we have a trusted brand. And we saw very high compliance with Safe Travels and with the pre-check program where we verified on the mainland before they arrived. Where we did see an impact is neighbor island flying. When you're coming on a vacation in the islands, the cost of a test was, it's material, but, you're already spending a good deal of money for your vacation. between the islands, that test was, a multiple of your ticket price, and it really impacted neighbor island travel with the test requirement in there. So that would be the biggest impact I would expect if we came back to that. Is from the mainland, not much because we're used to it, but in between the islands, I could see that being a cost penalty for those who want to travel neighbor island.
New York City is implementing a program now where you have to be vaccinated to enter bars and restaurants, or they're putting it on the customer. Then, do you ever anticipate the airline, could they even do that, where you would mandate that your customers be vaccinated to fly?
Well, that's something we've discussed with the administrations since the beginning of COVID. That would fall into our regulators' purview. So if our regulator said that that was a requirement, we would certainly follow it. And in general, that would have to be established someplace like at a TSA checkpoint or other places in the airport, because the airlines are all kind of behind security, so to speak, and have kind of their gates are not always in the same location. So for us to be able to do that, it would really be a requirement from our regulator and likely implemented by the airports themselves. So we've followed along with all the regulations now. And if you travel internationally, when you come back in the country, you have to have a negative test. And so if it changes to vaccine, we would certainly go along with what our regulator says. But once again, it really has to come from them rather than from us.
One of the things that we're seeing in the trends are a lot of first-time visitors to our islands, people who have never had the opportunity to come to Hawaii, but now they are visiting Hawaii. And with that comes people becoming educated about our culture and our history and the types of ways that we do things here in Hawaii. There seems to be growing tension sometimes between local residents as well as visitors about the education efforts that are going forward to making sure that visitors are respectful of the culture, that understand the traditions, that understand the protected and sovereign areas of our islands. How is Southwest helping to educate guests and visitors coming to our island so that those who are coming here to Hawaii for the first time are aware of some of these unique cultural practices and traditions?
So right now we've incorporated that into our in-flight announcements. We've put the Malama Hawaii video content onto our in-flight portal for customers to look at when they're traveling there. We point them that way from our flight attendants. I would say that this behavior problem, which you're referencing, we're also seeing across the mainland. It seems that there's a subset of society that kind of forgot how to behave correctly when they travel, when they visit, when they're out and about. Everything from overall, accident rates going higher because people driving poorly, and other natural parks and such. We've seen lots of more irresponsible behavior. So I would say it's a minority of people, but it's still something that it's awful to really see. And so what we are looking at is how we can improve and communicate hospitality, and that's something that's part of our brand. And so we are rolling out hospitality training to our front line. However, right now we have such a problem with, in general, in the airline industry with poor behavior. It's hard for it to get through while we're trying to get people just to comply with the current regulations. So it is a problem we're all going to have to wrestle with, I think, for the next, hopefully just a few months into a year as people learn how to behave when they travel.
I want to bring in this question from Sheila, and she's saying, is Southwest Airlines going to make Hawaii a hub where future flight attendants can be based in Hawaii? What are some of the employment opportunities with the airline right now, and what do you say to Sheila?
We have lots of requests for flight attendant bases. We have 11 flight attendant bases throughout our system, and usually you need about 100 departures for a flight attendant base to make sense. We don't have plans to have 100 departures in Hawaii, so it's unlikely that Hawaii will be a base for our flight attendants. Though what we do is we allow our employees to commute. So we actually have lots of flight attendants now that actually live in the islands and previously commuted to the mainland. And so now what they do is they trade trips to kind of fly within the islands and have their duty period start there. So that's something we allow and encourage them to do if they want to live other than a base. But for our base, we really need a level of activity that we're probably not going to have in Hawaii. Now, we're hiring aggressively in the islands for our front line. We do not outsource broadly like you see a lot of airlines do. So the people you see in Hawaii that are wearing our uniform, they're our employees. We pay good wages. We pay good benefits. We pay good profit sharing and 401k match. So we strive to be a very good employer that if you are joining as a front line, you can make a career with us. And so we certainly would love for you to go to, the career section of our website and apply, because it is a job that we are proud to give to people. We want to be a very good employer. We want to make people have a good living and a good retirement.
One of the conversations that happened during the pandemic was the type of visitors that we want to attract here to our islands. And some say that right now we are attracting the wrong type of visitors. The state has talked about targeting this higher spending visitor and charging more to guests upon arrival. Southwest has offered flights as low as $99, which may be counter to what this state's vision is and the type of visitors that we want coming here. Do you think those types of low fares helps or hurts Hawaii's visitor industry and the value of a vacation here in our islands?
Well, the flight cost is the smallest part of your island vacation, and so I think get a lot of misnomer. We strive to treat our customers in an egalitarian fashion. And to charge low prices and give high service. And so what that means, if you go to the mainland, we've been operating for 50 years, is we have a group of customers that understand that and are attracted to this proper way of doing business. So we don't nickel and dime you. We don't give you surprises. We have a very customer-friendly policies. And as a result, we attract a surprisingly higher end customer. And once again, everybody is welcome. We treat everybody well because we think that's the way you should have hospitality, which we should treat others. But because we offer kind of low fares and high quality service, we end up with a very attractive customer segment as far as air travelers go. So if you're seeing our customers, they're likely to be your better customers, not your worst customers. I might say it's probably the airlines that that offer what's called basic economy. It's a stripped down product that really starts to irritate people. That might be the grumpy people you're seeing, not our customers.
You mentioned that you don't plan to have 100, enough flights basically for a flight attendant base here in Hawaii. But are there expansion plans that you folks are looking at? I know the routes are always changing, especially now that there is such an increase in domestic demands. What are some markets that we might be able to look forward to in the coming years and months?
Well, right now we've pretty much satisfied our original plan. The things we added to our original plan was neighbor island flying and the Vegas flying, especially from the neighbor island. Those were the things that were not originally slated to happen, and we pulled those forward, as I said, to be able to kind of give as well as take. And so we think we spend our time now maturing those routes, making sure those go well. We provide high quality service on those routes, and I think really now our expansion is elsewhere on the mainland. We've opened up 18 new cities. We didn't furlough anybody during the pandemic. We didn't cut wages at all during the pandemic. And because to do that, we had to redeploy our aircraft into new markets to keep people busy and keep aircraft busy. So those 18 new markets on the new cities on the mainland, that's going to be our focus, really, to kind of make those finish out. And for Hawaii, it's more about maturing the capacity we already have. A future day, there may be more flights, but right now we're very pleased with what we have and want to make sure it just goes well and we provide a quality service.
One of the things that makes Hawaii unique is, of course, just the culture and the way that we do things here. And it often is difficult for mainland companies to come in here to adapt to the culture, to kind of make the people feel like they are part of the islands. And sometimes we see that pushback from local people who are very used to some of the traditions and things that they experience here in Hawaii and the companies that they're used to flying with or working with. How has Southwest felt just with the overall business of working here in the islands? Because we know that it can be a challenge of working through some of the different structural things that we have here. Of course, the airport capacity is one thing, but just overall, what has the experience been like for a company that maybe is not born and bred here in the islands, but coming to the islands? How has the reception been overall, and some of the positives and negatives that you've seen overall?
We're very grateful with the reception we've received. I will say we went out of our way to begin with because we wanted to make sure we weren't perceived poorly as just some mainlanders trying to take advantage. And so we also didn't want to try to pretend like we're local. Hospitality is part of our culture, and I think there's a good resonance with the aloha, but we're not trying to pretend like we're local. And so you'll even see in our taglines and our advertising, it'll say, "Thanks for having us." We know that we're not local, but we want to be more than a visitor. We want to show that we can do things correctly. We can have our version of hospitality, have it resonate locally. And so we want to make sure we're a good visitor, but also a good employer, a good community participant. So we've gone out of our way to send executives there, to make sure that we provide good hospitality for the Kama'aina. And so that is what we've done to go out of our way, and that's been reciprocated. So we've seen no pushback, no disparaging of us for being mainlanders. We think it's gone very well. Once again, we like to do things properly, maybe a little old-fashioned way, and the people of Hawaii has responded when we've made that effort.
Ryan did address the tension, and you did as well in some of the earlier comments. As we close out our half hour here, the time goes so fast, but what's your closing message to people in Hawaii, especially those who might feel a little burdened by just the amount of people coming to the islands right now?
Well, I would say we feel your pain. The pain you feel is real. We feel that as a transportation provider, not just in Hawaii, but elsewhere. The problems with misbehaving customers, we feel that as well. And mostly in other parts of the mainland. We don't see that so much in our Hawaii flights. But I think that's something that as we're coming out of COVID, we'll all have to deal with. And by showing, proper respect, proper hospitality, we hope to convince people to act civilly. And so civility is a big theme we're having in our communications, and we're going to strive to make our customers at least understand they should behave civilly when they're, on island, when they're anywhere else in our system. It is I think a joint community effort we all need to do to kind of get back to behaving properly as we come out of COVID.
Okay, Andrew Watterson from Southwest Airlines, thank you so much for spending time with us here on this Friday. We appreciate you being on the show, and we would invite you to come back in the future. Love talking to you and getting more of an update about Southwest and plans here in Hawaii.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Aloha.
you. Aloha. Well, interesting to hear from him, and I thought it was really illuminating to hear his response, basically, to Mike Victorino, the mayor of Maui, and others who have asked for them to reduce the number of flights. He says it's basically an antitrust issue. It's not something that they can conspire together, if you will, and do as an industry, because that is a violation there. And he says it really needs to happen on the sort of receiving end, if you will, that if you limit the number of resources that tourists can experience when they're here, there are fewer hotel rooms, fewer places to stay, fewer rental cars, that then naturally the demand will go down because they just can't find anywhere to go. So I thought that response in particular was interesting, and also just good to hear, their commitment to educating travelers, and that they are experiencing on their end too, that he said at one point that people seem to forget how to behave, if you will. Some folks did during COVID, and they're trying to re-educate their passengers.
Yeah, we're really saying Hawaii is not alone when it comes to the things that they're seeing with visitors going to different destinations, as well as the influx that they're seeing in other different markets as well. Of course, Hawaii has become a favorite market by many in the mainland U.S., but like John DeFries has said on this program, the head of the Hawaii Tourism Authority a few weeks ago, they do expect these numbers to sort of tail off once other destinations become available and people can begin traveling once again to other tropical destinations. Once Europe begins opening up, they do see a leveling out. And right now, because of the pent-up demand and the limitations of destinations, Hawaii continues to be a sought-after destination, and thus we're seeing these increase in numbers and visitors.
We appreciate all your comments. The folks who wrote in, Sheila, I see that you want to be a flight attendant. And Andrew did talk about that there are ways that even if you can't hub here in Hawaii, you can trade flights and have opportunities there. He also talked about a number of positions that are open when it comes to other parts of the carriers. So you can check out their website there if you are looking for a job. He said there are opportunities there. One of the things, Ryan, that you mentioned is possible changes to the Safe Travels program should verification, not only of vaccines, but also testing, be brought back. We're going to be talking about that on Monday with Governor Ige, along with a lot of the things that he mentioned in his news conference yesterday.
Yeah, no doubt will be a very important conversation to have coming out of the weekend. We know that leaders right now are also meeting about gathering sizes, if any of those restrictions will come back into play. Of course, Governor Ige making that big announcement yesterday about those vaccine mandates for state and county workers. But there still is a lot of questions out there as we continue to see those case counts, really the highest that we've seen all pandemic long. A lot to talk to the governor about on Monday. So we expect to have a full show and encourage you all to be a part of that as he joins us here to start off our week next week.
Until then, we wish you a great weekend. If you have the opportunity and haven't already, please do get vaccinated. Remember, there is widespread free testing throughout the state. So if you have any concerns about your health, please take advantage of those resources. Please stay safe, wear your mask, do all the things we've been talking about for months here. And we'll see you right back here with the governor on Monday at 10:30.
Aloha.